Well, hi, everyone. This is Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Podcast Network. We are back with another MGMA Member Spotlight podcast. Our guest today is Kendra Yahns. Kendra is Executive Director of Perkins Spine and Sports Medicine. Kendra, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I have been listening for a while and excited to be able to contribute some of my ideas and just have a conversation.
That sounds so good. I did want to mention that since you brought it up, you actually contacted us and that was so neat. So talk about that. You're listening to of the podcast. I'd love to hear it.
No, I appreciate you having me on. I was listening to one of your episodes. And you had mentioned if people have any ideas to go ahead and write in. I immediately had a couple ideas that I wanted to share be able to get my ideas out to share with fellow private practice leaders in the area and ideally throughout the nation. And so that's what spurred this to happen, which I'm excited about. Okay. To be able to get to share ideas and have a conversation and share best practices is really what is exciting.
Yeah, and that is so cool that you reached out to us, and I want to thank you for that. You said you have been a faithful listener to the podcast, so you knew the format. I sent you over some kind of an outline of questions, and you went, yep, I know the format. So this is Member Spotlight. We really want to get to know the MGMA members, and so I think it's a good place to start with your healthcare journey. What got you into healthcare in the first place, and what keeps you going in healthcare? Just tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I started really in animal health, veterinary, just fell into it. I had dogs and lived near a veterinary clinic when I was younger. So started there, was frontlines forever, until I kind of realized that the potential career path is only so far. And didn't really feel like going to veterinary school. So kind of just started looking at what is out there down the academic route. Really have always been interested in leadership, and healthcare is definitely a stable sector of work to get into. And so I figured what better area to get into than being able to help corral and lead those around me for a cause that is actually something that you can be passionate about. So kind of just, I guess, fell into it. I guess it's a journey, but that's brought me to where I am now, and just kind of kept pursuing, got my degree, kept pursuing leadership roles, just kept working my way, and then found myself in Ohio for family and fiance and kids. And the sector of, I had a drawing more towards outpatient, ambulatory than inpatient. So just knowing that the actual sector of healthcare didn't really matter to me because my purpose was the same. So I fell into the clinic I'm meant to be in, and just kind of let the chips fall where they may. And then here I am.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, we were talking offline, and you were saying, did you grow up in Seattle? You mentioned that you had a tie to Seattle. What was that? You grew up there? Is that right?
Yep. I grew up in Seattle. Actually went to school in Florida, moved back to Seattle, started my kind of healthcare leadership journey there. Started from the front lines, which I always recommend to everybody, because it really helps you develop an understanding of what's needed from leadership, who's involved, how they're involved, what the patient flow looks like. So started on the front lines there, worked my way up to leadership, just kind of kept moving along and found myself in a private practice in Seattle. And the previous practice administrator had a membership to MGMA. So the providers wanted me to have a membership to MGMA. So I said, okay, sure. And which is beneficial because being private practice, you can come sometimes kind of feel like you're out on a island. Who I don't have anybody to network with, to share best practices, to bounce ideas off of. So anyways, joined, found out there was a podcast. I have a hard time reading, but I will listen to a podcast. So started listening to the podcast, moved out to Ohio for my fiance. And that's how I found MGMA, and then landed from Seattle all the way to here.
Yeah. I have to ask, before we leave Seattle behind for good, have you ever met Meredith Gray?
No, but oh my gosh, one of our reps came in the other day wearing the Grey's Anatomy scrubs, and I was told her, oh my gosh, when I was younger and first started in healthcare, I wanted a pair of those scrubs so bad. And now people, the younger generations today probably don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that show's still big, but yeah.
It is still going. I think it's in like season, I don't know, 21, 22, somewhere. I'd have to go fact check myself, but I know that I saw an ad for it the other day. So it's still going.
And speaking of, it's really funny to talk to clinical staff about shows like those, because they'll point out very specific things in the show where they identify something is very not in alignment with how clinical practice actually goes. So it's kind of funny to hear those stories. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I thought I should ask. Yeah. So how's your adjustment to Ohio? How are you liking that?
It's a little bit slower than Seattle, depending on what you're referencing, but just more space. People are really super friendly, kind of has that Southern hospitality. I try to tell my family housing prices are awesome.
Right.
So yeah, lots more land here, which is nice. But I'm about 45 minutes north of Columbus.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of a drive where people here kind of sometimes get a little surprised that I'm willing to drive that far. And I'm like, that's nothing. I grew up in Seattle. Anywhere you're going to work, you're going to live about an hour away.
Right. Yeah. I spent almost a decade in Southern California and Orange County and then LA. And my last commute, I tell a lot of people, it was an hour and 30 minutes both ways. Drive 20 minutes to the train, take an hour's train, and then a 10-minute subway drive or ride to my actual office. And so it's 3 hours traveling each day, and had a infant at the time that I just, wasn't getting to see as much as I'd like to. So we moved to Denver, and we've now been here coming up on 17 years in Denver. And so it's been a nice adjustment. So how long have y'all been in Ohio?
I've been here since mid to end of 2020. I can definitely resonate with the multiple commute factor there, because Seattle, I took the bus for a little while, and the sounder, all those type of things. So here I'm like, hey, it's a 45-minute drive, maybe 50 to an hour if there's traffic, but there never is. And there's lots of beautiful farms and scenery on the way. So I will take it from the stop and go and the bus and the parking garages and all.
For sure. And you've got a really good podcast you can listen to as well there, on your drive.
That's my commute. That is my commute daily podcasts.
Yeah. And I think one of the things when you emailed me just to inquire about the podcast, you said my only suggestion is do more of them. So you have more in your playlist so you can listen to those. So that was really sweet of you to say that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have professional podcasts to listen to because there's a ton of podcasts out there, but especially from a private practice standpoint, I started listening to the AMA podcast and they did about 9 episodes and then I haven't seen any since.
Hmm.
So it's just nice to have continuing education
Right.
for
Right.
myself, especially as in private practice and as a private practice leader, there's tons of information out there, but you want to make sure you're identifying the reputable information that will lead to growth, not just shoving more information in your brain.
I gotcha. So let's talk
Yeah.
about Perkins Spine and Sports Medicine. Tell us about that practice. If you have anything about the size and scope of the practice, anything else you might want to share with our listeners so they get a really good sense of what this practice is like.
Yeah, so I actually started with a different organization that my current provider was part of. Um, Came in, did some data sharing, kind of helped the providers identify that they maybe would be more profitable, kind of disbanding and going their own ways. So me and this provider opened Perkins Spine and Sports, so he had his own practice, could develop his business structure the way that he wanted and that we thought would be best suited for him. So that has been about a year since we opened Perkins Spine and Sport or transition into the new entity. It's physical medicine and rehabilitation specialty, which is mostly spine, spine care, minimally invasive spinal procedures for pain management, and some other things along the lines of pain management, but really trying to provide therapeutic modalities and not just pharmacological modalities for patients' pain. So that's what we focus on. We're very small. We've titrated down quite a bit and been able to do that by bringing in interns to our practice. And that's one thing that we've definitely been able to take advantage of. My provider has students and residents rotating the year. So we thought, well, I even thought to myself, I had to do an internship for my degree. I had to, it was part of it. And I remember how hard it was trying to find one. So I just started putting feelers out and come to find out there's a lot more demand than I even realized. So that was one of the main points I wanted to bring up in a topic that I thought would be beneficial to share with other private practices.
Yeah. So
did I miss any points about our practice specifically?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. Well, what about the staff? You said it's pretty small. How many people do you have there?
Yes. So our main MD full time, we have another nurse practitioner that supports his patients in clinic. And then we have one remote in Michigan that used to be physically present, but she wanted to move back home to be with family, and all our patients were very upset about that. So we were able to keep her on for one day, just telemed, to be able to see the patients and keep that relationship going. Because that is one thing about our private practice that I do love. Our patients have been with us for some of them decades. My front office staff know them personally, and it's just really awesome to see those relationships. So other than providers, I have myself and then maybe two full-time office staff and maybe 2 very part-time rad techs that come in for procedure days. And we've been able to keep very, very lean because, of course, it's healthcare and there's always ancillary tasks and paperwork and the tedious mundane day-to-day that doesn't bring in any additional revenue. But we've been able to stay very lean by bringing in these interns and mutually teaching them, giving them skills and opportunity to learn and grow and be ready for a career. And also take some bandwidth off staff just during the day-to-day tediousness.
Yeah. Well, in a practice that size, I mean, are you wearing all the hats? Give us an idea of what, I don't know if there's a typical day, but maybe a typical week, the kind of different hats you're needing to wear as the executive director there?
Yeah, so I started as the practice administrator with the previous company. When we opened this company, I kind of presumed the role of executive director, just based on everything I do. My provider really just wants to see his patients and make the money. So really, I handle everything else: the staffing, the revenue, the P&L manage. I mean, everything, credentialing, overseeing the billing department, which some people I know prefer to be a little bit more hands off with all that stuff, but for how small we are and how streamlined we really try to be, it helps to be involved. And again, that's why I think it's been very beneficial for me to have started on the front lines, so that I've had a little bit more exposure to some of those direct hands-on tasks than maybe other leadership roles might have had. So yeah, I oversee everything.
Yeah.
Everything that goes into running a small business, which is a lot more than I think meets the eye.
It absolutely is. I've had so many conversations in different industries where someone is a leader, and then they, for whatever reason, they move into an entrepreneurial role where they own the business, and you might
Mhm.
be an unbelievable salesperson. You might be an unbelievable physician. Whatever the role might be, whatever the industry might be. But the overriding comment I get from people is it's a whole different game when you're actually running a business. Because as you said, your
Yes.
physician, he's there to serve patients, to see patients. And there can be a lot of administrative burdens that get in the way of being able to see those patients. So,
Yes, yes. And I think business acumen has a lot to do with it too. I mean, I've worked at private practices that the physicians do want to be part of the business, regardless of how maybe prepared they are to be involved in the business aspect, because there's so much that goes into it with the revenue and the accounting, and some of it you really just have to have that business acumen to fully be able to navigate, and that's hard when you've trained your entire life for something very different and specific. So that's where I like to come in and be on the business side. Let me run the business and you run the clinical, and perfect match.
well, you did reach out to us by email. I think you had listened to one of our Ask an Advisor podcast with Christy Good, and
Mm.
you emailed in and had some comments, some questions. You've brought that up a couple of times. What are the topics that you want to share with our listeners here?
Yeah, so two things specifically. Mentorship and internship opportunities for our potential future leaders, and then how to go about training those future leaders. Because I'm really coming to find, just through developing our internship program, that there's really a gap in the academic sector and the career sector, where students are going to school to get their degree in a specific area. Specifically, I've had interns rotate through that are preclinical, that have a sociology, public health, specifically healthcare management. Maybe they still kind of don't really know what they want to do because they really haven't been told or educated about all the sectors of healthcare and different career fields that they could go into. And coming to rotate these interns through and just talking to them, I've come to find out that um, they're gaining an academic degree, but they're not gaining any skills that these entry level positions are wanting to hire for. Because you might have the degree, but that doesn't mean you're going to skip over these entry level positions.
Right.
So offices like myself, I continue to hear through my associations, and managers meetings that I go to, that they just can't find people. There's healthcare is just, there's always a demand. There's always a shortage of workers. But at the same time, we're not hiring for opportunity. We're hiring for skills, which an academic degree doesn't, with the intricacies of healthcare, what you need to know in order to come into a role, the academic degree doesn't quite trickle over to the career sector. So we started our internship program just kind of as a pilot. I just kind of started it as an experiment, one at a time. Let's see how this goes. And we've really ramped it up to now we have maybe 2, 3, 4 interns rotating through at a time, kind of saving us 2 to almost 3 full-time FTEs, just depending on what our internship looks like at that semester, that time, saving us full-time FTEs, but then gaining students, giving them the skills and opportunity to develop so that when they're done with our internship, they can maybe actually go apply and get a job. So that's kind of what we've been trying to strive for. And I'll hopefully get some feedback as we continue through our internship program on how our interns are doing, post internship, having applied, what kind of job did they get. So I'd like to follow up and see where some of them land. But that's really our goal, because again, I keep hearing that there's just not sufficient supply right now
right.
for hiring managers for all these roles.
Yeah.
But there's so many students that can't find a job, and that's what they want. I've had so many interns rotate through that the internship may be required to get their degree, and they're having a super hard time finding an internship. Or I've even had interns rotate through that really just wanted the experience so they could get a job and get out there. A lot of them are very passionate about wanting to get out there and make a difference, but they're just not getting an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that you're having as many as 3 or 4 rotating in at a time. So something's working that you're doing. So what is that? Are you going straight to universities, or what are you doing to ensure that you have this steady supply of 3 or 4, however many interns it may be at a given time? What advice can you give to our listeners on that?
Yeah, so that was a little bit of a hunt and peck game for me. At first, I did start calling universities and schools directly, and no one could really give me an answer. They all were kind of like, "Oh, just go to this website, handshake." And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." Okay. There's no one to call for the website. And apparently it's just kind of like a platform, a third party that the universities use to link up with internship opportunities. So I had to you basically go on there, post a job. It can be unpaid, paid for a specific time duration. You can attach different universities on there, and the university will either accept or deny that job posting based on whatever. I have no idea what the criteria is, because I haven't been able to get a hold of anyone at Handshake to find out. But it has worked so far. I just kind of put my job posting on there, explain who we are, what we're looking for, what we offer in terms of the internship. I like to put my direct email for them to reach out, because that lets me know they're really interested. And for about a year and a half, I would say, maybe a little longer, we've just been keeping the internship program going. And I mean, there's really no risk in it for us. We worst case, we try to let the interns know we're going to onboard you as if you're one of us. This is for every opportunity for you to get experience and gain those skills, ask questions. If you don't feel comfortable with a certain level of care that, like maybe some don't like answering the phone, or, they're just coming out of school. So some of them don't have any prior work experience at all. But that's why we rotate so many of them through. They can get experience. Some of them, we don't force them to stay for any period of time. I recommend an average of about 12 weeks. And that's for their benefit. But to get the full scope of patient flow, gain as much experience as they can, because every day is different, especially on the front lines of healthcare. There is so much to learn.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the platform. Where did you put this ad, or where did you connect where people could then
Yeah.
communicate
So
with you?
handshake.
Handshake. See, I didn't know if that was just a joke you were making. So Handshake is a platform. I'm sorry,
Yep.
I wasn't familiar with that one.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I wasn't either until I started calling universities and they said, I
okay.
don't know, go to Handshake.
Handshake.
So,
Okay. Wonderful. Tell us about this
Handshake,
platform.
yeah, it's a little clunky to navigate, but you can basically sign up as an employer,
Okay.
post a job,
Okay.
um, and either it can be unpaid, paid. There's all sorts of different, little things you can check off. You can require students to have a certain GPA if you want. But I just kind of used the very basic version. You can even pay for additional features to the site, but I just use the basic version. I just continuously keep job postings on there. I'm very communicative that it is unpaid, but we're going to offer you as many skills and opportunity to learn that we deal with day to day and involve you in as much as possible. And to kind of structure my internships in a hybrid type role if they're interested, and offer some leadership and management training and education as well. And I think I don't know if it's just a complete oversight kind of from the industry that this is an option, um, to kind of bring people into the career sector and create those candidates that all us hiring managers want to see, um, or if there's just some sort of stigma that it takes too much time and energy that we don't have, uh, which I have not seen be the case. So, because I know training, we all say training is time consuming, laborsome, costly. Um, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So, I mean, we've kind of structured our internships where the the set rotating out, getting ready to rotate out, is training the set coming in. And that also gives them training experience. So just looking for every opportunity to maximize, um, our offering to these students that are going to be the next, sector of career workers and wanting to get out into the career field and someday leaders, um, while also identifying, what's the best way and most streamlined way that we can facilitate this education that also helps us because we have more people, more staff here picking up those little pieces of bandwidth that maybe we think we don't have throughout the day.
Yeah. I know that you had one other topic you wanted to talk about. So, for a final question, this is on leadership training. You've got some ideas about some small changes you believe the industry could make to bring leaders in and help move them along in their career. So, tell us about that.
Yeah. So I know that when I was first coming into my new leadership role early on in Seattle, company at the time did try to pilot a leadership training program, um, which was great. But again, it was all very broad based topics that don't really resonate to your day to day. And I've just kept hearing through different podcasts and, leadership talks that, we all get promoted based on the fact that we're very good at our job. But then we get into a leadership role and we kind of go, okay, well, what now? I'm good at my job, but I don't know how to lead people. So I think I've tried to incorporate some kind like a leadership playbook, which is very, based on my experiences, my perceptions and stuff like that. And that's the hard part too, is leadership. There is no black and white. It's all very gray. But I think it would have been helpful for me to have some very basics, philosophies of leadership. What's the difference between managing versus leading? How do I learn about both and each individually and how to incorporate them together? Things like that. Um, Things like best practices around communication, organization, work life balance, and how to manage that as a leader. because that's a huge topic out there right now that I'm delving into. Other things, management styles, human resources best practices, and also things about healthcare leadership that you just wouldn't know until you get into it. So I'm kind of developing a leadership playbook that includes some just kind of bullet points around those type of topics, podcasts, articles, just an easy play-by-play that students can kind of take away and do their own continuing education. And I like to sit them down and include them in some of this information in terms of what my experience has been, and walk them through how do you run payroll, little things that, every hiring manager wants you to have skills in, but you don't learn until you get in there and start doing it. So I think little things like just having some sort of module training or a handout, or just involving staff into being able to take on more responsibilities and learn about these things if they're interested in it. I think management and leadership, as managers and leaders, we could just be a little bit more mindful about how to incorporate those kind of things and taking into account if we're, kind of feel it's a little bit of my duty to share my best practice knowledge with those that are going to go out into the career field and could benefit from it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Kendra Yahns, Executive Director of Perkins Spine and Sports Medicine, thanks for joining us on the MGMA Member Spotlight podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I am going to provide direct links to some of the topics, including Handshake and any other information that Kendra shares with me. I'll put those in the episode show notes so everyone can directly access that. And until then, I want to thank all of you for being podcast listeners.